2002, Hiddink took a South Korean team that had never won a World Cup knockout match and dragged them all the way to the semi-finals. Still, the best finish by any Asian nation ever. 16 years later, the Chinese Football Association brought that same Hiddink in to do the roughly the same job, get the Olympic team to Tokyo. It lasted about a year, fired after a string of bad results in warm-up friendlies. Same coach, same continent, wildly different outcome. And once you understand why, you understand basically the entire story of football in East Asia. Two of these three countries are at this World Cup playing three matches right now, this week. The third hasn't been back in 24 years. One appearance in 2002, lost every World Cup game and didn't score a single goal. That third country is China. And on paper, China should be unstoppable, but that's not it on the pitch. In 2016, the Chinese government put out a national plan with a deadline attached. Become a football superpower by 2050. The numbers were enormous: 20,000 new schools for football, 70,000 football pitches, 50 million kids trained. Almost none of which produce a single footballer who could start for half a decent Chinese Super League team, let alone the national team. So where did the money actually go? Transfer fees. In one single year, Chinese clubs spent close to 400 million euros buying foreign stars, the kind of fees that made global headlines. The poster club for that whole era was Gonzalo Evergrande, bankrolled by a property billionaire who by most accounts treated the club less like a sporting project, like a favor to the government. They won the title after title, then the parents' company debts, reportedly around $300 billion, caught up with everything. The club got kicked out of the league, shut down completely. The trophies didn't save it because nothing underneath the trophies had ever been built. The senior team result was almost comedic at this point. Their most recent World Cup qualifying campaign ended with a 7-0 defeat to Japan and a 3-0 defeat to South Korea. The cycle before that, they lost to Vietnam for the first time in their history, a team they had never lost to. And that single result ended their World Cup hopes outright. Since 2019, China has hired and fired 6 different head coaches, each one introduced as a fixed, none of them rare. There's an old, almost mythological moment in Chinese football. A World Cup qualifying decade lost decades ago, bad enough that it sparked actual riots in Beijing. Decades later, the emotional stakes haven't moved an inch. What is actually changed is the size of the check written to try and skip past the parts where you actually build something. Now, look at Japan, and the contrast is almost funny. No riots, no billion-dollar transfers, just one unglamorous decision in 1993. Launch a fully professional domestic league, the J League, and build it slowly on purpose. One of the league-owned executives has described the approach as deliberately avoiding the quick, centralized, money-first model, choosing instead to go patiently and learn from you over decades, not transfer windows. What that patience actually look like on the ground? Every single J League club is required to run its own academy, feeding into the structure national youth competition built especially to give teenagers consistent high-level minutes. On top of that, Japan State treats its national high school football competition as a genuine cultural event. It fills real stadium and a meaningful chunk of professionals came straight out of world tournaments rather than an academy at all. The federation actually tracked the payoff between 2003 and 2014 alone. The number of registered players under 12 by 20%, not from a marketing push, but from 2 decades of grassroots football, funding nobody outside Japan was paying attention to. 30 years later, after the 1993 decision, Japan beat both Germany and Spain at the same World Cup. Players like Takefusa Akubo, Kaoru Mitoma are not filling out European squad for headlines. They are starting every week at clubs most countries will be treated to send a single player to. South Korea version of the same story almost in parallel. That own domestic league, decades of patient investments, and that Hiddink learned 2002 semi-final as a living proof the patient model works at the very highest level. The head-to-head record against China says everything you need to know about which approach actually won. Over 31 meetings between the two nations, South Korea has lost to China exactly once. And that solitary Chinese win came against a weakened, under-strength South Korean side that barely resembled their first team. So, strip away the riots, the $300 billion in investments, the 6 fired coaches. What's actually happening here? It's not population. China is bigger than Japan and South Korea combined, several times over. It's not money. China spent more transfers fees in a single window than Japan and South Korea Federation probably spent on youth development in a decade. The difference is what each country chose to build first. China tried to buy a result that will show up on television next season. Japan and South Korea, on the other hand, built academies, youth leagues that won't show up as a result for 15 years and then they waited. Football development behaves like a compound interest. The unglamorous investment in a 12-year-old today is what shows as a starting player at a major European club 15 years from now. China kept trying to collect the interest without ever making the deposits. And that's the real story behind why two countries with fewer resources than China are out there playing the World Cup matches this week, while China sits out the tournament for the 7th time running. China is not even the only one making this exact mistake right now. There are at least other football nations doing the same thing as we speak, throwing money at the senior team while ignoring everything underneath. Tell me in the comments, can China actually fix this, or is the system too broken at this point? Subscribe for more breakdown like this, football business, and the system underneath the sport. I'll see you in the next one.